Katrina Blues by Ronnie Earl here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Anjali Kamath. On Sunday, President Obama visited New Orleans and praised the recovery of the city and the resilience of its people. We'll hear more about what this recovery actually looks like in a few minutes. But first, we go back in time 5 years ago to the days right before and soon after Hurricane Katrina made landfall, beginning with then New Orleans Mayor Ray Nagin ordering the evacuation of the city.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wish I had better news for you, but we are facing a storm that most of us have feared. Every person is hereby ordered to immediately evacuate the city of New Orleans, or, if no other alternative is available, to immediately move to one of the facilities within the city that will be designated as a refuge of last resort.
New Orleans and the Gulf Coast region remain in a state of catastrophe following the devastating Hurricane Katrina. At least 80% of New Orleans is underwater. The city has no electricity and little drinkable water. Officials say New Orleans will be uninhabitable for weeks. On Tuesday, 2 levees broke, flooding areas of the city that appeared to survive the storm.
This is a national disaster. Get every doggone Greyhound bus line in the country and get their asses moving to New Orleans. That's they thinking small, man, and this is a major, major, major deal.
Talking about tens of thousands of people who are left behind, and those are the sickest, the oldest, poorest, the youngest, the people with disabilities and the like, and the plan was that everybody should leave. Well, you can't leave if you're in a hospital. You can't leave if you're a nurse. You can't leave if you're a patient. You can't leave if you're in a nursing home. You can't leave if you don't have a card.
There are throngs of people, easily in the tens of thousands, maybe 40 to 50,000 people, in my estimation, standing on this plaza, trying to get to a very narrow area where they're being escorted to the buses. I haven't seen one bus leave yet.
It's bad. 6 and 8 months. Let people just walking past us.
No food, no water, no nothing. Whatever we had, we've been taking it. That's the only way we could survive.
They got the food right here. Let me show you right here. Oh, look, right here. Look. They won't give us nothing. Look. Open the gate right there. Look. They won't give us nothing. We ain't drinking no ice water, nothing.
It's not about low income. It's not about rich people, poor people. It's about people. Nobody wants to hurt anybody in the city. Nobody wants to hurt these people who have these businesses. And they want a little air and a little food and water, for God's sake. That's it.
There's nobody in charge. The National Guard, the police. There is nobody. Somebody needs to come take charge and put organization and get these people to safety, to get them clothes, the basic things that they need to live from day to day.
Well, we've been people being killed down here. Some of the bodies were just lying out in the street. They were shooting each other. The military was shooting. One of my neighbors said the military guy shot at him. So that's what made me not want to come down here.
Federal relief officials have played almost no role. The head of FEMA, Michael Brown, admitted on CNN last night his agency didn't even know that thousands of hungry refugees were inside the convention center. The White House announced it would have zero tolerance for looters, even for those taking essential items needed to stay alive.
Well, I want zero tolerance for that kind of language being used by leaders of our government to discuss poor people, poor black people who are trying to survive under the most desperate, insane circumstances.
I hate the way they portray us in the media. If you see a black family, it says they're looting. See a white family, it says they're looking for food. George Bush doesn't care about black people.
In Biloxi, Mississippi, the first federal aid arrived only yesterday, 3 full days after the storm wiped out entire sections of the city. In smaller towns in Mississippi, help has still not arrived.
We left for the hurricane and came back Monday night hoping that we could help some people because, I don't know, looking at the response to this storm, particularly initially, there wasn't a lot of outside help, so we decided that really it was up to the people of Jefferson Parish to take the parish back.
What I saw from the federal government was a grand total of 3 boats. Border Patrol agents on 3 boats, 2 airboats and 1 flat-bottom boat. And I saw far more of a response from citizens who had just taken it upon themselves to go and pluck people out of their homes, and they plucked about a dozen out on Saturday.
We don't have any government response here. Everything that's taken place is taken place by volunteers and citizens in the area. Why aren't there 50 inflatable boats in the water working a grid, making sure all these people are out of here? Why is it just volunteers? That's the only people you see around.
FEMA Director Mike Brown is in charge of all federal response and recovery efforts in the field.
Brownie, you're doing a heck of a job.
Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi has called for your resignation, and I'm wondering if you have a response to that.
The president's in charge of that, not me.
Now, his body been here for almost 2 weeks, 2 weeks tomorrow. All right, that this body been laying here. And there's no reason for it. Look where we at. I mean, it's not flooded. There's no reason for them to be left that body right here like this. I mean, that's just totally disrespect.
New Orleans community organizer Malik Rahim. Excerpts of Democracy Now!'s coverage as the catastrophe unfolded in New Orleans 5 years ago. Well, I'm joined now by lifelong New Orleans resident and civil rights attorney Tracie Washington. She's the president of the Louisiana Justice Institute. And we're also joined in New Orleans by writer and community organizer Jordan Flaherty. He's an editor of Left Turn magazine, and his book is just out from Haymarket. It's called Floodlines: Community and Resistance from Katrina to the Jena Six. Welcome to Democracy Now! Jordan, let's begin with you. Take us back to those days, the chaos, the catastrophe was unfolding. Explain what was happening and how communities were trying to live with as much dignity as they could at that time.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. It's always a pleasure to be on, and I really appreciate the work you've done to shine the light on these important issues. In that period right after Katrina, the media portrayal of the disaster shifted very quickly from sympathy for the survivors of the storm to portraying people as looters, as criminals, as gangs that were out of control in the streets. And you had the governor of the state of Louisiana saying, we're sending in troops, they're locked and loaded, they've been trained to shoot to kill, and I expect they will. You had, we recently discovered, the second in charge of the police department telling people it's between them and their conscience if they wanted to shoot looters, if they wanted to shoot to kill. You had this perception among the police that they could shoot whoever they wanted and no one was going to investigate. And that, it was so painful to think about these people that were killed, the Madison family and other folks who were crossing over the Danziger Bridge in those days after the storm, trying to get to dry land. Police came on them, fired a hail of bullets at them, shot Ronald Madison, a mentally challenged man, in the back, and then ran up and stomped and kicked him until he was dead. And then even worse than all of that, even worse than the murder, they invented witnesses, they fabricated and planted evidence, they collaborated to invent stories, to have a believable story for what happened. Henry Glover, an African-American man on the West Bank of New Orleans, was shot by one officer, then kidnapped by other officers, put in the back of a car, and that car was later set on fire with his body in it. Danny Brumfield Sr. at the convention center, in front of scores of witnesses, he was seeing car after car drive by with police officers and others, no one stopping with any water or food. He ran up to one car, the car deliberately hit him, the officers then shot him in the back. And these stories were not told. Democracy Now! Told some of them, especially in your conversations with Malik Rahim, But overall, our local media failed us. Every check and balance that we were supposed to have failed us. The district attorney was not interested in looking into it. The U.S. attorney was not interested in looking into it. And for years, what kept the story alive was people at the grassroots, people like Tracie Washington, people like Safe Streets, Strong Communities, a grassroots criminal justice organization, the People's Hurricane Relief Fund, who had a People's Tribunal on the first anniversary of Katrina and documented some of these stories. The family members, the Madison family, the Glover family, kept these stories alive against years of silence and against years of the coroner's office classifying Henry Glover not as a homicide, despite the fact that there was this burned body in a car. Eventually, Malik Rahim got the story to Rebecca Solnit, who got the story to A.C. Thompson, who started investigating. We had a new Justice Department in 2009 that was finally interested in investigating civil rights cases for the first time in at least 8 years. We had grassroots activists from New Orleans who went to the Justice Department and went to the Congressional Black Caucus and asked for these investigations. And finally now, this story that nobody wanted to hear about is now the story that everybody knows. And that's because of the efforts of these people right at the center of it, these grassroots activists, these family members that kept the story alive and fought for the truth to come out against this wall of silence.